Greetings Terrarians, Chaos here. Today I'm working hard at finishing up the Patreon builds that I owe from around the time that I moved, and I thought it would be fun to share one of the larger ones with you all today. This particular build reward is one of my 5-hour builds, and the patron hasn't asked for anything specific, leaving it up to me to build them whatever I'd like, as long as it's a rad base. So if my vanity appearance today didn't give it away, I feel like doing something sci-fi. Specifically, I'm going to be building my patron a space station on an asteroid. The first thing that I'm going to do is fly up to space and mark off some boundaries. I'm going to be using a large world this time around so that I have some more sky to work with. So up first, I'm going to go up here, and you can see that we have stars going, but we still have clouds and it's a little bit light. So I'm going to keep going until it sets into complete blackness, and it's going to be right about there. So I'm going to grab my ice rod and place a block beneath that ice rod, and it doesn't matter what at this point. And then I'm going to just place a block and go down until it starts to get light, so I know what the very bottom of space is. I know exactly what I have to work with. You can see there, if I go up one block, it's darker, and here it's lighter. And the reason I want it like this is so that it has the full ambience of space without looking a little bit lighter. I don't want players to walk through the base and have segments where the background flickers like this. So this is going to be as low as the base is going to be. I don't want, like, I can have appearances of maybe the asteroid coming down here and parts of the build, but I don't want players to be able to walk any lower than this so it doesn't break the atmosphere. I'm also going to mark off the top, and that might sound a little bit weird because obviously the screen stops moving at the very top of the world, so why do I need to mark it off? Well, the thing is, this is only a 5-hour build, and I don't want to spend all 5 hours working on just building a big asteroid, which could easily happen, and that's exactly what the patron doesn't want to happen. So I'm going to be doing the asteroid in T-Edit, and when I go into T-Edit, you'll see that the top of the world in T-Edit is actually a little bit bigger than this marked line. So there's actually space above here where the mouse cursor and your character can't go, but theoretically you can place stuff up there in T-Edit, and I don't want to accidentally place anything too high that the player can't actually see or reach. So this will be the canvas for my build in between these two markers, and I'm going to go ahead and switch to T-Edit and get to work on that asteroid. Okay, so now we're here in T-Edit, and you'll see if I zoom in, up here in the sky we have our two indicators. Now it's pretty clear that there's plenty of space to work with up here. I can even place a bunch of dirt up there, and of course that's going to be the top of the screen, so that's why I marked off the top, and I marked off the bottom as well because while T-Edit attempts to show you this line here between space and sky, you can see it's actually more like the center line of where space is, and it's not exactly an easy thing to work with, so that's why I mark off the bottom as well. The first thing that I'm going to do is grab a material that I don't really plan on working with, and I'm just going to pick bubblegum block right here. I'm just going to make a wide line across, just so I remind myself the entire length of the build, however wide this turns out to be, not to cross that line in any point. And at least in terms of where the player is going to be walking. In terms of materials for the asteroid, I'm going to be using a lot of sandstone and desert fossil. I thought about doing this with gray painted clay, which would look good. And the reason I would be using clay is so that we don't have things like blink root or strange plants growing on top of it. But I do want it to look a little bit more darker and textured, so I thought about using the desert fossil. And while I was thinking about that, If I use sandstone as well, you could see that they actually blend together, which gives me a little bit more of blending options and making the asteroid look a little bit more realistic, such as that is. I mean, it is a 2D game, it is Terraria, that's not going to exactly be realistic. Okay, so maybe in T-Edit you can't actually see the blending happening, but I promise you it's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and time-lapse the asteroid building, and then we'll get into game and start the actual base. And while I work on that, I just wanted to point out that this base is going to be created in the center of the world. The big reason for this is that harpies and wyverns can spawn within the space biome, and they're very distracting, easily breaking the immersion of outer space. One way to counter this is to fill the base with NPCs, but since this is going to be a base at the start of progression rather than at the end of progression, there aren't going to be many NPCs in here. There's pretty much just going to be the guide at the beginning, so you would still get harpies in space early on in the playthrough. Harpies and wyverns, however, cannot spawn in the center of the map. By building the base in the middle of the world, I can guarantee that no pesky harpies will attack the asteroid. So now you'll see here that we have 3 large-sized asteroids and apparently a sandstorm. Nice timing, so I'll be right back. Okay, no more sandstorm, and actually that brings up an interesting point. Since I used a lot of desert materials, even though it's the space biome, it does count as a desert. I suppose you can get sandstorms up here, but to be honest, I kind of like the way that that looked. It added more ambience to it. Nonetheless, I'm going with these materials anyway. As you can see, they've blended, and there are some segments that don't, but we'll work with that in a little bit. We have 3 rough, large-sized asteroids now, which I'll be doing the builds upon. And this one's mostly going to be inside of the asteroid, maybe a little bit of a structure up here at the top. And then these smaller ones are going to have the structures on top and not so much in the inside, because this are going to be our bottom line. As I said, if we go any lower, the background starts to flicker to a brighter color, and that's what we've got to work with. So what I'm going to be doing is building the structures first. I'm not going to be worrying about shaping these asteroids yet, because I want everything to be in place, and then once that's done, we'll get into detailing the asteroid belt or the asteroid field or whatever you want to call it itself. So I'm going to start off, I think, with the center one in the middle here, and I'm going to be building a base through the center of it and over the top. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all of the support you all have given me from my first video back after the move. It's doing extremely well, and it really does put my mind at a lot of ease knowing that you all still come back for my content after such a long break. I really think that I have the best community, and that means all of you. The video even pulled in nearly 5,000 new subscribers, which is absolutely amazing. Welcome to the channel, everyone who's just joined us, and a massive thank you to everybody who's been sticking around since the beginning. We are well on the way to hitting 100,000 subscribers before summer, or as my Aussie viewers like to remind me, June 20th for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere. In fact, we gained so many subscribers that it's even possible we can hit our goal by May or even April. So thank you all very, very much for taking the time to subscribe to the channel. I cannot wait to celebrate 100K with all of you, and it's looking like that might happen sooner than I ever anticipated. Okay, so now I've created the framework for the entire base, as you can see here on the map. We've got a bunch of empty corridors. There's no decorations and no walls yet, but the entire 3 asteroids have various structures crawling about them. Now, I haven't shaped the asteroid yet, and it's relatively undetailed, but I'll be getting to that probably towards the end of the video. Up next, I'm going to be doing the background walls for all of the structure, as well as these false foundation areas that I normally do in my builds nowadays that I think just adds an extra layer of depth to the builds. So what I'm going to be filling these areas in around the structure is with the unobtainable naturally generated rock walls, and to do that I'm going to have to do it in T-Edit, but I do feel that they're going to look the best And once all of the walls are in place, I'm probably going to go ahead and start shaping the asteroid as well before I get to decorating the build itself, just to get everything looking nice and tidy. But before we get into that, I'll just give you a quick tour of what we have going on here, so you can just imagine that these gaps over here and like over here are going to be filled in with rocks to make it look like part of the asteroid, while these are going to be filled in with structures, walls, so it looks more man-made within the asteroid. We have several half domes and full domes dotted around the structure, just because I felt that in a space environment, these domes would probably look the best. And it's something that I've done in the past, just not always glass. I just feel that glass would probably be a little better of a look. Now, you might be like, hey, it's an asteroid belt and it's glass. They're probably going to shatter, but let's just pretend it's really sturdy glass or something. And then the last asteroid's over here to the side, and it's just got two smaller domes over here and a room at the bottom. So what I'm going to be doing is working on background walls. I have a good idea of what I want to do, but I don't want to make it exactly the same as all of my other sci-fi backgrounds, so I'm probably going to try and tweak it around a bit. And then I'm going to hop into T-Edit and fill in these false foundations, and then I will get right back to you. So now we have all of the background walls done for the entire build, as you can see on the map. It actually looks quite interesting within the map, I believe. And for the most part, we have tin and copper plating with some cobalt brick, some meteorite brick, some emerald gem spark that is offline, and some adamant type beam, and some purple rain wallpaper, all of which are painted gray. I decided to paint the blocks for the build itself white so that it stood apart a little bit more from the asteroid, which is all obviously gray. I left the background walls gray and kept with the white physical portions, just so we could get a better visual of all the pathways. It was a little hard to see where all the paths were when the entire structure was gray. I also created these light fixtures overhead, which have some copper pipe wallpaper that's been painted white, with some white painted palladium columns on either end, and some diamond gem spark that's been hammered to a half. Now these don't count as light sources, but they do emit light. So when I get around to decorating the build, I'm going to have to add some more light. I also have a rudimentary airlock. I thought about doing it a little bit more complicated so that you can only have one door open at a time, which would be fairly simple to do with logic gates, but I didn't want to go and spend too much time on working on that when it would just be a kind of aesthetic and not necessary for the build. I did want to make it look like these structures weren't going to be ripped apart at the glass by adding some support beams in between each of the meteors. And then what I'm going to be working on next is filling in decorations for all the rooms. I have various doors set apart, and there's more than enough space for NPCs to each have their own room. I'm not sure that I'll give decorations for houses for every room, because this is going to be used as a base for my patron, and I want them to feel like they can do whatever they want with this base. So I'm thinking about going fairly minimalistic with the decor. However, there's something that I really want to do within this dome is something that I really enjoy doing within space builds. As you might tell from my space station, I'm going to be building a little biodome in here, I think. So I'm going to get rid of this floor down here, which is actually team wall or team block, and I actually might add that around the build in various places for the floor, but we'll see about that in a little bit. I'm going to be filling this in with some dirt and some rock, grass, waters, trees, plants. Oftentimes within sci-fi shows and games, biodomes or biospheres will feel very flat, almost like a nice peaceful garden within the dome. And I wanted something a little more over the top than that, because this is Terraria, things are already flat enough. So for this particular build, I wanted to have the main feature of the artificial biome be a gigantic rock with a waterfall rolling off of it, and then a small cavern off to the side. There are a lot of plants and trees within the dome, which the trees I had grabbed using cheat sheet, and the plants are mostly dye plants. It's possible to grow trees naturally within the dome, but trees cannot grow in front of a background wall, so to save time, as the dome was already walled off, I thought about pasting some trees in, and I thought it would suffice. These trees should probably not be harvested, however, because in order to grow the tree back, you would have to remove the walls behind the sapling that you plant, which in turn can possibly let enemies spawn inside the base during a blood moon or other event. Once the biodome was completed, I began decorating the rest of the base on the inside, as well as building a small shuttle. Outside of the structure, I built some antennae, and I also built some solar panels and some smaller asteroids dotted around the entire base, also using some white painted luminite ore that had been actuated. I placed some small floating rocks and basically some space debris all around the structure. And that's going to do it for this asteroid base for one of my amazing Patreon supporters. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be making this build available to the public for download, as it's a reward for someone's donation to my channel, but if they do choose to share the build, that's another option entirely. If you would like to consider supporting my channel, you can find a link to my Patreon page in the description below. I hope you all enjoyed this build. Thank you all very much for watching. I may be a little inactive for the next couple of weeks as I tidy up some important issues that are happening in my life right now, but hopefully I will be able to post on schedule soon. Until then, I'll catch you all later. Happy building!